Tonight we look at some big trials that are happening in our neighborhood. It's not like we haven't discussed them before, but they seem to just kind of linger. It's almost part of our daily lives. The Tsarnaev trial in Boston, the Hernandez trial in Fall River. Andrew Horwitz, the professor from Roger Williams University, is my guest. He's been here before. He's terrific, and I'll be interested to see what he says about these trials. I don't think we should have tried Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. I think we should have just said, okay, here's the deal. You're going to rot in jail for the rest of your life because we're not going to be able to figure out how to give you the death penalty anyway, and that's just been my point of view. But anyway, furious today about some things happening in the news, and we have to talk about it. But it's nice to have you around. By the way, Bo Bergdahl, charged with evasion, just came in prior to our broadcast taping tonight. Don't tell anybody. We record this late afternoon, so there'll be further commentary down the road. By the way, our program schedule has us off tomorrow night and Friday at 7:30. We will be on 11:30 with former programs that we have run. Phil Isle has a great story about trying to get a investigation cleared through, well, he needs some evidence from the FBI. We had that conversation recently. He was the managing editor of the Providence Phoenix before it went under. And we'll revisit Sean Daly for the 11:30 shows on Thursday and Friday. It's all because of the NCAA and CBS and programming schedules and all that kind of stuff. All right, well, that's enough of business. Let's get to the issues of the day. And by the way, welcome to my state of mind. I am Dan York, and you know who you are. What an old cliche that is. This is, Laura always laughs at the, you know, thank God Laura's around. She always laughs at the mundane things that I say.
I'm glad you know who you are.
She's glad I know who I is. Okay. This is, it just is, and I've got to get it off my chest, and I hope you understand that you need to get it off your chest. It's funny how time flies, right? The president was kind of semi-celebrating that today. You know the old cliche, one of the most popular ad campaigns, but one of the local affiliates had a little bit of a difficulty in the great city of Warwick. What else do we have here? Yeah. It's a bad way. Yeah, I wonder if the professor of law has any thought about this particular conversation. We'll find out. And it is, because our local guys aren't in it, yet it's still great to watch. And your state of mind is important to us, so we'll check in. All right, let's skedaddle through this, but I got a couple of things I got to say. It is an absolute disgrace, this gag order on the pension settlement deal that is running around through the state. Here's today's headline at the Providence Journal. And if you read this, and you didn't gag on your Wheaties or throw the newspaper across the kitchen or whatever you do when you finally do read the newspaper, then you're just comatose. Think about this. Let's read this slowly. Impact of votes against pact unclear. Judge's gag order continues to limit information. You know, this is an absolute disaster started by this woman, the Superior Court judge, who decides that in this next round of negotiations over the settlement of the pension deal, that no one can talk again. This time, however, no rules have been publicly established, even for the people who are voting. And so the union members, one after another, secretly after another, half advised and informed after another, roll in like sheep herded into a vote. Justice Williams, not pictured there, but the former Chief Justice and special master assigned by Judge Carter, runs around and explains to everybody how they're most likely going to lose in this particular case, and it'd be a good idea for you to settle, even though I understand and empathize with your pain. Last time around, we at least knew what a vote counted for. They grouped all of the plaintiffs into 6 identifiable union groups, and if any one of those union groups voted no, then there was no settlement. Well, one union group voted no, and there was no settlement last year. This year, we don't know if that rule applies. This year, we don't know if it's one person, one vote. We don't know if it's one person, one vote, one collective bargaining agreement, or one local vote. We don't know anything about how this thing works. Nothing. Nada. It's an absolute disgrace. This is a third world operation the state of Rhode Island is running for a $4 billion, with a B, billion dollar matter. Every politician in this state that touches this in a leadership role, and every union leader in this state that abides by the gag order that this judge has issued is complicit in the third world operation we're running here. Now, let me skip the second headline, Laura, and just run this audio. Here was Scott Avedisian, who was casually asked this morning on WPRO by Gene Valicenti about what he thought about this whole thing.
We are all part of the gag order that the judge issued. So my legal counsel has told me that I can't even respond to questions on it at this point.
Looks like we got a boy's life picture for Scott Avedisian there or something. Wasn't that like a Life magazine photo? Or I don't know. But can't say, you know what the most convenient, a boycott of media and a gag order by a judge provides the best cover for every politician. And I'm not just picking on Scott. This is for all of them. It's outrageous. It just is absolutely outrageous. Here's the latest headline, by the way. Ted Nesi, digs up along with the Providence Journal the idea that the settlement will cost $32 million more than we have budgeted in the next fiscal year. The next fiscal year. That's a lot of money. No matter which side of this aisle you're on, know that the unions, the personnel, the state employees, and the taxpayers are being equally mistreated by this third world process. One of the biggest disgraces I've ever seen in the state, and that takes a lot to say. 5 years of Obamacare. Yes, it's your anniversary. You may not be celebrating. Some of you may be because you've got coverage. The headline, yep, the debate has barely changed, including the president's remarks about the debate.
Before the ACA, healthcare was the single biggest driver driving up our projected deficits. Today, healthcare is the single biggest factor driving those projections down. I mean, we have been promised a lot of things these past 5 years that didn't turn out to be the case. Death panels, doom, a serious alternative from Republicans in Congress.
Premiums are higher in general. Choices are lower in general for customers. The Supreme Court's got a big decision to make on constitutionality as to aspects of Obamacare coming up in June, and then GOP presidential candidates for 2016 are vowing to strip every piece of language about it out of the system. Stay tuned. Could be an interesting next 5 years. Yeah, you know what the motto is, right? You remember what the motto is. That's the ad campaign, but somehow it ain't working for the local Motel 6 in Warwick. This is not good. Oh, lordy, loo. And the good chief of the Warwick Police Department is just beside himself with all the activity there.
When it comes to the old real estate cliche, location, 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 Motel 6 on Jefferson Boulevard hit the spot, sitting just off 95. But according to Chief of Police Colonel Stephen McCartney, that's part of the problem, too.
Human trafficking, for prostitution, for drugs, possible firearms incidents.
Those are just some of the crimes police have responded to at the motel in the last year, making 75 arrests. Last summer, a standoff. Last week, the manufacturing of meth. Last Friday, sex trafficking.
There's a good rhythm to that story. I don't know. It's a bad ad, though. How would Tom Bodette say? Oh, this local franchise is a long way away from the we'll leave the light on for you. Poor Tom. Got to write a new script. All right. This is not good. I've always had really queasy thoughts about how the court of public opinion ruins people's reputations. We don't know whether the case sticks here. Here's the headline. So the mayor that we mentioned before, on a totally different matter now, seeks more information on a Warwick teacher. And for some reason, he's playing a Robin Hood with the school department, demanding more info on this story.
Warwick Mayor Scott Avedisian tells Eyewitness News he is looking for more information from the superintendent's office on the history of 49-year-old science teacher Mario Otoyen at Gordon Junior High School. Avedisian tells us Superintendent Richard D'Agostino has refused to provide it, prompting the mayor to consult city attorneys to plot the next move. Mario Otoyen is on paid leave accused of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old female relative in North Kingstown in June, according to school officials. Police tell us the alleged victim is not tied to Gorton Superintendent D'Agostino declined to go on camera Tuesday, but in doing so, told us he'd received no indication any student had been victimized.
Yeah, listen, I violated my own principles here. You can't tell the story without showing the story, right? On the radio, I talk about this and I don't mention someone who's charged with sexual assault unless it's so egregious and so obvious. Here's the thing. I mean, the mayor is, barnstorming, looking for more information so he can respond to the community about the safety issues involved. And this guy never had a problem inside his school. In this country, we rightly protect the identification of victims of sexual assault. But as soon as somebody is charged with it, it becomes public. And we have a guilty until proven innocent philosophy when it comes to the court of public opinion on this. And so if in fact this guy ever finds out or ever gets an innocent verdict or the case goes away, that might be fine and dandy, but his reputation is stained for life. You may be declared innocent, but you're always going to be guilty. And I think we got to revisit how we deal with this stuff, both in the courts and in media. All right. And finally, it is because our teams are out completely. But Yahoo's headlines, there's a Cinderella-less Sweet 16 out there. It doesn't mean that you can't get behind somebody. And we don't even have video of our local teams because I guess the sports department is so despondent. We got to look at Kentucky, who's odds-on the favorite. In some ways, I think there are 15 teams that are actually playing for second place. But it's a fun watch starting tomorrow night. And again, because of the tournament and CBS and Jeopardy moving over, I won't see you at 7:30 tomorrow night and the next night, but I will on Monday. But we will see you at 11:30 with shows that we formally produce. State of mind, important. Want to hear what you think? 228-1886. Email me at stateofmind@myritv.com. You know how to do this. Or tweet or Facebook post, and we've got one here real quick. The problem with Rhode Island is the media covers for the communist unions and how they operate in secret. Hey, Manny, guess what? It ain't just the unions, okay? It's the judges and the politicians. They're all in the same third world boat together. The Professor on court trials locally. Next. All right, here's the headline on the Tsarnaev trial, the latest. Okay, well, no kidding. Guilty. Well, no kidding. The defense saying he did it. Well, no kidding. Please don't fry him. We won't. Right?
Right.
Okay.
I think that's right.
All right, we're done with that. Let's go back to that in a second. You made a point to me during the break, which is really important. For those who are, I may not have been clear about something, and the hypocrisy, even within my own commentary, regarding that case of the teacher in Warwick, who is reportedly charged with some kind of sexual assault with a relative, and the politics of everything that goes along with, racing to the defense of the kids who've never had an issue with the kid in the school.
Right.
I get very worried about those who are inadvertently or wrongly charged with sexual assault because it's a crime you can never come back from in the court of public opinion. Do you agree?
I agree completely.
And you made a point to me during the break. Tell me.
So my thought was, as I listened to what you were saying, and then I watched the video or the picture twice. He's up there twice. He was up there once, it came down, it came back up.
Yeah.
And I agree with your point completely. We do a terrific job in general of protecting the privacy of people we perceive to be victims. We do a disastrous, really disgraceful disservice to people who are accused of, but not yet convicted of, crimes.
So, Jared, I want to explain this to you folks because we have some operational issues that go on between this show and the material that I borrow from Eyewitness News, and we have, obviously I'm employed by the same company, but we have a cooperative relationship, and I'm not in a position to really edit their material. On the radio side, I do so all the time. In fact, I won't mention somebody's name in this context because it is feeding the beast that I'm criticizing. You point out that I really kind of doubled against myself there, and it's true. So it leaves me but it's almost poetic in a sense that this guy's poor face has been plastered all over Kingdom Come, and at least while we're doing it, I'm able to say, by the way, that guy may not be guilty.
Right.
So don't judge him yet.
Yeah. Although the story about his exoneration, if that comes,
will be this big
on page 17.
It may not make the television broadcast.
Right.
Or the radio broadcast.
Wouldn't.
And
right.
that's That's something I think media in general needs to really do an introspective look upon. The public's right to know. This is the same thing, by the way, when it comes to Megan's Law. I think you know the level 1, 2, and 3 stuff that you can look up over you know, child assault is, I guess, an asset. But to me, all it does is it makes somebody fear living in their own neighborhood, and the net values, that real estate property values, just go down when you find out that Joe Blow is living in your neighborhood. I say throw away the key. If a guy is convicted of that kind of stuff, throw away the key. Don't put him back in society, so we have to mess up how we handle him being back. I mean, there's a lot of sexual assault is a real head case legally in our state and in the country.
I agree with some of what you said about Megan's Law. This might be another show one day. Megan's Law, to me, that whole notification process, I think, does not do us a service.
It creates anxiety.
It makes it impossible for somebody who actually is capable of rehabilitation to be rehabilitated. And I think it, on some level, creates a false sense of security. If you believe that you now know who the sexual predators are in your neighborhood, you couldn't be more wrong. So the randomness of being told about the small handful of people who've actually been identified and prosecuted, it is nothing but that. It's nothing but random. And the vast majority, or the majority of sexual predator offenses happen within a family. So notification does nothing for any of that.
You know, boy, you're right. It's another show. But it's an important show, because I think people get they get so worked up. Oh my gosh, now I can't have my little girl ride around the neighborhood on her bicycle. Well, okay. What do you do with that?
Right.
Other than live with it.
Right.
And take Valium. No, really. I mean,
I know.
What do you do?
I don't know what you do, but knowing that the guy 4 houses down was convicted
now I know that I
some
should really
offense.
watch my kids. Well, you should watch your kids anyway.
Correct. That's my view.
Yeah, anyway. You know what, we're going to pause, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about a couple of trials here. I'm glad we got to that, and thanks for calling me on it. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back with Professor Horwitz. Listen, the original premise for your visit was just to kind of check in on your thoughts on what's going on with the Tsarnaev trial, mostly. I don't know what we're doing there. What are we doing there?
Well, I got to say I agree with the comments you made in the teaser or the lead-in or whatever you call it. We're spending a phenomenal amount of money to try and make the difference between letting this guy spend the rest of his life in jail and killing him. I have my own very strong feelings about the death penalty, very strongly opposed. But even if you put those aside, even if you were somebody who believes in the death penalty and believes that this is the right case for the death penalty, it doesn't strike me as particularly likely that that's where we're going to wind up, and we're going to have spent a fortune to get there.
You know, some people are going to say, oh, you know what, you can't take your philosophy on the death penalty away from your analysis. I, too, lean toward, I think a pro-life position, which I have, is also a non-death penalty position, and that's a whole another show, right?
Yes, it is.
But I'm also ambivalent about cases of this significance. I'd say a prayer to God to do the right thing if in fact he was put to death. Here's the thing. They're not going to get there.
Yeah, I don't think
They're not going to get there. His brother made him do it. I mean, you knew what the argument was at the beginning, and I don't understand why the feds didn't just you know, what are they doing? What are the feds doing trying to make this case stick? And what is the catharsis? I mean, I've listened to a lot of Boston radio, and there's a lot of therapy going on here. But for the most part, true therapy is private. So
we heard a lot about that after the station fire case. There were many, many people after the station fire case who were very upset that there was never a trial, that there was never an opportunity to explore the evidence publicly, to sort of answer some unanswered questions. And I think that's part of what you're hearing in Boston is for people who've been victimized, several of them have said after they've left the stand, it felt important to them to face the bomber and to be able to tell their story.
But that's not why we try people.
Well, we say that's not why we try it. In this particular case, it might be part of why we're trying.
that the federal government is providing an opportunity for the victims and their families to get that therapy.
To voice their anguish publicly, to face the scenario.
So are you arguing against yourself? Are you,
No.
Are you leaning toward that being a valid reason to actually put the community through all of this? And it's not like there's an OJ play-by-play going on here.
Right.
It's not like there's any mystery about how it's going to end up.
No.
Unless you want
except for
the morbid process of whether or not we're going to put somebody to death.
Right.
And a terrorist who's homegrown, who's got an application, who's got a financial problem at the local school,
Right.
who really isn't grown of ISIS and Al Qaeda the way we know it to be.
Right.
It's a hybrided mess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you asked, am I arguing against myself? No. I think in the end, I don't think it's a logical choice to take this case to trial. But I do understand some of the value of it. I don't think the federal government representatives would tell you that's why they took it to trial. I think they'd tell you they took it to trial because they firmly believe that he should be executed and they want to do everything in their power to get there. I think that's what they'd say.
But sometimes prosecutors, or most times, I mean, I'm sure you teach your classes, you know, when you're teaching criminal defense, you're also measuring the negotiation on plea and the like against the prosecution's burden, which is they've got to decide whether the case is winnable.
Yes.
And I think anybody who looks at this thing would hardly hedge any kind of a valuable bet that this thing is death penalty resulting.
Well,
it's a crapshoot at best.
Yes, it's a crapshoot, but I don't think it's worse than a crapshoot from the government's perspective. And let me give you a couple of points on that. One, the jury is what's called death qualified. So what that means is
they've all said they do it.
They've all said they are willing to impose the death penalty. So that takes out a whole slew of people who, you know, you would think would even be inclined to vote against the death penalty.
Well, you had to get, you and I couldn't be on that jury.
Right.
Because we
could
had
not be
misgivings
on.
about the death penalty.
And by the way, irrelevant in this case because there's an admission of guilt. But in a case where there's no admission of guilt, there's some very interesting data and research on the death qualified jury being much more likely to convict in the first place than a non-death qualified jury. Not relevant here, but sort of interesting to think about. You seem quite confident the death penalty will never be imposed. I'm not quite so confident.
Well, you only need one to say I can't do it.
That is true.
And,
you need
so
one.
that's my point. I mean, would a majority of them say, yeah, that's it, end his life? I bet.
Yeah.
And as you add more and more stories, you get more and more angry about what he did
Yes.
and what his brother did, and the chances and the proclivity to go death penalty get there. But I can't. I'd lay the mortgage on the idea that you can't get unanimous.
Yeah.
Anyway, when it happens, one way or the other, you'll come back. Thanks for squaring me off on the other thing.
Sure,
by the way.
my pleasure.
And it's always good to have you. We're out of time. Are we out of time? We're out of time. One final word and we come back. Stay with us.
Wow, that was fast.
The professor is sharp. You know, we'll see how that trial works out. Please don't get the idea that I think that the Tsarnaev trial is a waste of time completely. I just don't think it's a proper prosecution anyway, because I don't think it's going to go where people hope it's going to go. And the last thing we need is another disappointment. Anyway, hey, tomorrow night, it's not Phil Isle. We did that last week. Dr. Skip and his overdose epidemic book and his thoughts on that. Tomorrow night at 11:30, and then Sean Daly, the man, the myth, the legend, as it says on my script, Friday night. We will not be here 7:30 tomorrow and Friday. Be back 7:30 and 11:30, regularly scheduled next Monday. All right? Bye. See you on the radio at noon on WPRO. Good night.